Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. He's only gone and done it again. It seems that only yesterday I was having to point out how ridiculous Lee Anderson has made himself and his party Reform UK look, and he's at it again. This time it's about getting conned about Reform UK's prospects in the Welsh elections in 2026. It appears he couldn't be bothered to read the actual numbers. I hear he finds double-digit numbers hard, and he's just ended up humiliating himself again. But it might also be interesting to see what the actual numbers are as well. But first, for daily political commentary, please click the subscribe button so you don't miss out. So, what's Lee Anderson been up to again? I shall tell you. Exhibit A is this Leanderthal tweet from yesterday. Winning in Wales, he says. He posts a link to an article which claims that Farage is predicted to take over the Welsh Parliament. The link is from Guido Fawkes. Yes, that well-known purveyor of made-up stories and confected rows. There's a chart in the thumbnail which shows Reform UK being the largest party in the Senedd, with more seats than Labour even. Well, this is interesting. I've discussed recently how Reform UK may indeed do well in the Welsh elections in 2026 and could easily overtake the Tories. But actually being the largest party in the Welsh Parliament, yeah, it seems unlikely. So you click on the link and, oh dear, the article isn't there. So what's happened? Well, it turns out that the story was, you'll never guess, completely fabricated. Guido Fawkes got found out, had to pull it, and Anderson either hasn't noticed or doesn't care, as his tweet with the defunct link is still up. But was this a genuine mistake? Or were both Guido Fawkes and Lee Anderson deliberately lying? Was there any reason which could have led to a genuine mistake? Well, the first thing I'd say is that if a poll did come out saying Reform UK would win the most seats, it would represent such a seismic shift compared to recent polling that nobody with any sense of intellectual curiosity would be likely to go along with it without having checked it first. And, you know, to be fair, nobody ever accused Anderson of being an intellectual, I suppose. But surely you would just have a quick look at the actual poll results before writing an article on them. Particularly as they've done a chart. They've done a chart that must be based on some numbers. You know, so you look at the poll. The poll in question was commissioned by Reform UK, but it was carried out by Survation. Survation are a credible pollster. They have published their full results just as any credible pollster would. So let's take a look. Now, the first thing to note is that Senedd elections will give you 2 votes. You get to vote for the party or candidate you want to represent your constituency, as well as the party or candidate you want representing your region, as the Welsh Parliament goes to full proportional representation in 2026. So let's look at the results. So for the constituency choice, the weighted results with undecideds included, 28% said they'd vote Labour, 19% say implied, 18% Reform UK. So Reform in third place there. But that is a small minority of the overall seats, right? So then the regional list, this is by far and away the most seats. So there it's 26% say Labour, 18% Plaid, 17% Reform UK. So Farage's posse are in third place there as well. So even if you combine the results to get an overall shape for the next Senedd after May 2026, you still have Reform UK very much in third place, albeit only slightly behind Plaid. Now, this takes them a little ahead of the Conservatives, certainly. You know, the Conservatives scored 16% for both the constituency and the regional vote, very consistent. But nonetheless, and granted that there are undecided voters in the mix as well, but what these results indicate is that Labour will be the largest party by some margin, though nowhere near a majority of their own. But that is often the way with proportional representation. It's actually why it's so good for kiboshing narrow political interests. Simply taking over, it is possible for narrow political interests to take over a mainstream political party, like UKIP did with the Tories or Trump did with the Republicans, for example. But you only get power out of it with first past the post. You can share power with it, as has happened in the Netherlands. You can share power, but you can't hold power. But there's no way of looking at these results, which are accessible to the public. I found it within a minute. It's easy. I've put a link in the description below if you want to check it out yourself without having to spend that minute looking for it. There is no way of looking at these results and even mistakenly thinking that Reform UK could possibly be the largest party in Wales. Even if you just randomly say, all those undecideds, oh yeah, they'll totally turn to Reform UK. We'll just add 100% of the undecideds to Reform UK. Still doesn't put them in first place. So although I don't know exactly what the Guido Fawkes article said, because they pulled it before I became aware of it, what I can say is that the graphic in their thumbnail, which Anderson is parading around, is definitely fabricated, not mistaken. Couldn't have made an innocent mistake like that. That being said, the results of the poll are still interesting. Now, I can't say how undecided voters are going to spread themselves around. I could speculate that in 2026, maybe Labour will be making more tangible progress nationally and fewer cock-ups in terms of their communications, and that will of course help Welsh Labour. I might also think, will Trump have blown up by then and become about as popular as a fart in a broken lift? At which point that could make things awkward for Nigel Farage's relationship with him. I don't know. But if we go by the results as they are now, and we have to exclude the undecided voters because there's nothing I can reasonably do with them, then this is what the known results would suggest. There's no realistic way of Reform UK being able to find themselves even part of the Welsh Government, much less leading it, as the now deleted article seems to suggest. The only party which is capable of winning seats, which might even consider an alliance, is the Conservatives. And even that, and a formal alliance between the Conservatives and Reform UK in any part of the country could be very, very awkward for the Conservatives in Westminster. So I'm not even sure if that would happen. But even if it did, between them, they'd have maybe 36 out of 96 seats. You're not getting a budget passed with that. You're not getting any legislation passed with that. So what's the most stable progressive alliance that could emerge? Well, Labour and Plaid did have an alliance in the current parliament. It sort of went a bit south, but you could argue that was the then Welsh Labour leader's fault. And Welsh Labour have changed their leader, so maybe that'd be on again. This poll would suggest they could get super close to half the seats. But if you add either the Greens or the Lib Dems into the mix, you would then have a majority. So the next Welsh government that emerges is actually most likely to be, obviously subject to agreements between those parties, but it is most likely to be, based on this Reform UK commissioned polling, Labour lead, Plaid, and one other small party. Not a snowball's chance in hell that it will have Reform UK sitting at the table. That being said, let us not downplay how serious this is. Reform UK are going to be occupying a significant number of seats. Things can change between now and the election. As I say, there's reason to suppose maybe Reform UK's popularity will wane. But if it doesn't, they are currently in striking distance of even becoming the second largest party in Wales, and that will help their growing momentum narrative across the rest of the country if people don't take the threat seriously. But they are nowhere near the force they are claiming based on any polling, much less their own. Remember, they commissioned this. Still, you can see why they would lie about it. Reform UK inevitably lose some votes to the Conservatives because voters see the Conservatives as the pragmatic choice for real power. If Reform can persuade people that they are, in actual fact, the major right-wing force in Wales, which actually is probably true in all honesty, then it is in their interest to embellish and lie their way to as many seats as possible. And because Wales are using PR, the sort of tactical voting employed in the general election this year will not be quite so effective. Though even PR benefits from pragmatic tactical voting to some extent. But the most effective tool against Reform UK will surely be to call them out to their voters wherever you see opportunities, and also to encourage as many progressive voters in Wales to vote as possible. In elections, it's not just about appealing to voters, it's about getting those voters to show up at the ballot box. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, you can join for memberships. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'll see you later.